Welcome to COASTER-net Uncut.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to COASTER-net Uncut. I'm, of course, Andrew Barchak from Chicago, Illinois, joined once again by Danny Miller of Rochester, New York. Now, you can see that both of us, he's smiling, I'm really not smiling, because I'm preparing for war right now. That's what I'm preparing for.
Yes.
Because Danny
It's
Miller...
going to be a war zone.
Danny Miller has been accosting me for the last 3 days, and I'm done with it. So I want to go on record of saying that Danny Miller's wrong. Okay, let's just start there, because that's what I love saying, that Danny Miller is wrong. That
I would love nothing more than to be wrong. I just don't think I am. I would love to be wrong. Let's go on the record and say that, too.
Well, what we're going to be talking about tonight is the Cedar Point watch that we're recording this on Tuesday the 11th. In 1 week, we will know what the Cedar Point 2016 ride is. Maybe it's not even a coaster. But tonight we're going to talk about all of the different things that have happened up until this point that has led us to this point, that over this weekend we have some leaks. People are raging on the internet about what Valravn actually is. And my theory for today, my main thesis, is going to be that everything you have seen up until this point is fake. But before we get to why it's fake, let's actually look at what's been released up to this point. So, first, earlier this year, we had a story from the Sandusky Register that said Cedar Point would be getting a dive coaster that pretty much laid out its stats, laid out its inversions, laid out the height, the length, the tunnel, pretty much went into detail exactly what this dive coaster was going to be, and said it was going to be $15 million. That's number one. Number two, we had Cedar Fair trademark the name Valravn. The interesting part of this is that not Cedar Fair trademarked it, but Cedar Point trademarked it, which up until this point has not ever been done. That up until this point, Cedar Fair has always trademarked the names, to my knowledge.
At least not initially.
Not exactly.
Some of them have been transferred. But...
Absolutely. So here, right off the bat, Cedar Point trademarked the name Valravn. Number three, you may notice that I'm wearing a very interesting T-shirt today. It is a Cedar Point T-shirt that was put out into the park this summer, and as you can see, there's clearly a dive coaster right there on the front of it. Now, come on, that's so that's not a coincidence. That's not a mistake. That's right there. It's clearly a dive coaster. There's no question about that, and it's on a Cedar Point T-shirt. And there obviously is no other dive coaster in the entire Cedar Fair chain. This isn't a case of Six Flags putting X2 on a Six Flags Over Georgia T-shirt. That's not what's happening here. So that was number three, and then number four is our most recent event over this weekend, where Cedar Point sent out a media kit to the media, and on there was a link to download an app. Some people broke into the app, basically, decompiled it, deconstructed it, got images from it, and supposedly we have a logo now for Valravn that I'm going to throw up right here, and we also have a number of different layouts. Now, the problem is that we first saw some very rough, renderings of what looked like a 3D environment that showed some track. We did not see a full layout there. And some people are saying now that later on that the layouts that were released were actually fan-made, that they weren't from the app. So there's questions out there. And if you look at other Cedar Fair renderings and layouts, they are vastly different from the black and white images that we've seen put out with this Valravn app. These images don't have any of the stations, don't have the catwalks. If you look at Banshee, Gatekeeper, Fury, they all had these things in there. But, Gatekeeper even had the stupid transfer track on it. Every single footer, every single thing, it was all there. So people are now questioning whether or not those layout pictures are actually correct. So that brings us to what we have right now. And the question in front of us is, do you buy all that you know? Do you buy this as fact? Is Cedar Point, are those renderings, is the name Valravn, do you buy that is what will Cedar Point be getting in 2016? I'll throw it to you, Danny.
Okay. Well, I think what we're going to do here, I'm going to go on the record right now, and I think just pure gut instinct at this point, with all we've seen, with all we know, I think that what we've seen is what we're going to get. And, I mean, there are plenty of reasons to go against that, and you're going to give a few of them. I just think history has shown, and, you know, you said this in our little, before the show started when we recorded a little bit extra here, that you can see if you're a premium club member on our forums, you'll be able to see that video. But you said that history shows that what comes out first has typically been correct more recently. And there's three things that we have to look at. There's three things that you look at when you're talking about things being leaked and information being out there for the rides. First and foremost, you have to look at physical evidence, physical things that exist on Earth that we've seen, that we know exist. And what I'm talking about when I talk about this is the Good Time Theater has come out. There's construction going on over at the park in that area, so something's going on over there. They've moved some rides to make a little bit more space, and there's Dive Coaster Track that's this copperish gold color, almost a brown, with the gray understripe and the blue supports, the navy blue supports that go with it. We've seen the stickers on both of them that are matching. That is the color scheme for a dive coaster somewhere. So we know it's a dive coaster because it's the thicker spine, it's the bigger spine. So unless B&M is doing something they have never done in the past, in which case, you know, throw everything out the window, there is a dive coaster that it has that brownish gold copper track with the gray understripe and the navy blue supports, and there is a dive coaster like that going in somewhere. Okay, so that's the physical side of things. Then you have intellectual property and intellectual evidence. And what that is stuff like the application, this Google Play or iPhone app, the trademark, the logo that leaked, the layout that leaked, and that is the easiest stuff to fake. That is the easiest stuff to fake. As we've seen with the Bat website going up 2 years ago for Banshee, they did a whole thing that was basically the Gatekeeper website transferred to look like the Bat. Okay? Physical evidence, I think, would actually also go into the blueprints that are taken from public record. We saw those with Fury, Banshee, and Gatekeeper. That's stuff that just exists. That's fact. The intellectual evidence, the trademarks, we've seen Centurion not be used yet. We saw the Centurion website last year that, so as far as we know, wasn't used for anything. The Centurion logo, that stuff is easy to fake. Now, the Bat logo was eventually used, but from what we were told, that wasn't the initial plan. The third thing you have to look at is media documentation. And when I'm talking about media documentation, I'm talking about things that get sent out from the park to the media, like these Google Cardboard glasses. And you've pointed out to me several times that things that have been sent to the media in the past have always been connected to the actual thing. If you go back to Banshee, we saw the silver combs, and, you know, the whole idea of the Banshee was she had silver hair and, you know, she had the silver comb. That was the connection there. Then with Fury, we're going back and forth between this Roman theme and this Fury Hornet theme. The media invite had the honeycomb pattern with the, you know, the silhouette of the Hornet wings on the bottom of it, and was the tealish and greenish color.
And don't
so
forget,
the media stuff has all.
Don't forget that those were delivered to the media by people in beekeeper costumes with nets. So people tend to forget that.
Right. So that sort of stuff, the key to think about with the media is we're not talking about just coaster rides. We're talking about newspapers. We're talking about magazines. We're talking about radio and TV stations. We're talking about news outlets. They're not going to screw with those people. because those are the people that are going to get the word out about your new ride. So you don't want to screw those people over. You don't want to be throwing them for a loop and piss them off. That's the key thing. So the physical evidence and the media documentation are the things you have to look at. And I think when you look at that kind of stuff, and we've seen enough of the intellectual stuff to this point where I think if everything that we're starting to see that's been leaked over the weekend is fake, I just think there's too much out there. I think that's just too much fake stuff. And again, maybe they're just raising the bar from the last couple of years and they're going all out and doing a bunch of fake stuff. At this point, I'm not confident enough to say that what we've seen is just a trick, is just a red herring. So I would say I'm 80 to 85% sure that the layout we've seen leaked is, if not exactly the same, very close to what we will actually see a week from tonight. I think Valravn will be the name, or I think Alex Dickey, one of our friends, actually found the correct pronunciation. I believe it's pronounced Valravn, V-E-L, Ra, instead of Ray. I've seen it typed out phonetically, and it looks like that might be the correct way to pronounce it. Maybe we'll find out in a week. Valravn has been the way that everyone's pronounced it. I've heard Valravn.
I don't think it's going to
different
matter.
pronunciations.
I think
well, right. So before I turn this over to you, I will say this.
No one's going to be saying that word after next Tuesday, trust me.
Well, okay. So before I turn this over to you and we kind of go through our little wild theory, I will say that I am fairly certain, not completely certain, that the layout we've seen, the logo, the name, I think that's what we'll hear about. Fairly certain, not 100%. That having been said, I would love to see a more extensive layout. I think it would be more appropriate. I think it would be much more Cedar Point. I wouldn't even be disappointed if Valravn or whatever it is not the name and it instead is something else. And we're going to get into that because Andy is more and more confident every day that we talk that that it's not what we've seen over the weekend and it's not this exact layout. And Andy, all that stuff leaked out on Saturday. Friday night, you and I had a very long discussion on the phone, and we talked about, we initially thought Friday night, before all this stuff leaked on Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon, we thought that Valravn was 100% fake. We thought that that was not the name, and we thought there was another name, another theme, and you are still clinging very closely to that. I have kind of let it go a little bit because we've seen more on the Valravn front. Now, I wouldn't be disappointed if we see it. I wouldn't even be surprised even. I just don't think that it's going to be that. I'm more leaning towards what we've already seen come out. But Andy and I are going to go through this theory that him and I came up with, and up until Saturday we're very sure about, and Andy is still really, really sure about it, or really wants it to happen, and that is this whole idea behind the legend of the Lake Erie monster. And we're going to go through some factoids and stuff that will make you say, well, maybe.
Yeah. So let me start by saying that I first think that both the name and the layout are wrong. That the bottom line is I don't think that ultimately that will be the layout of the ride. It's not like you said. You said Cedar Point has a style of coaster. I don't believe it fits that style of coaster. I don't believe that it goes above and beyond the way that Cedar Point's known to do. That's one. I think everything's been presented to us in too nice of a fashion that we have way more information. And the fact that information was given to us by the park is my main red flag. Now, you said physical evidence. I agree with you that we have a construction site. I agree with you that we have B&M track, that's dive coaster track. But I think the telling thing is the one point that you really hit on was the fact that the media is never screwed with. Never is the media screwed with. And if you look at the picture of the countdown, and if you look at the actual Google Cardboard design, you will notice a lake that is darker in color with a lightning bolt that strikes the back. We also found out that
that's what doesn't connect to the Valravn story.
Exactly.
That's the crux that we're kind of leaning on.
The problem is that the font that they used was God of War, which kind of does connect to Valravn if you go back to the whole medieval battleground idea. But the lake and the lightning bolt make no sense. That's where Lake Erie Monster comes in. That if you look at the story of Lake Erie Monster, that it's the story of this huge hoax. And if you go back through the history of it, it started way back in the early 1900s. Even before that, you have reports in the 1800s, the early 1800s, of this huge monster being sighted in Lake Erie. Now, you may be like, if you're familiar with the area, you may already know this story. If you're not familiar with the area, which I'm never lived in Sandusky, actually, this was one of the first times that I never knew this before. And the connections, not only to Lake Erie, but the connections specifically to Cedar Point are uncanny.
And this coaster.
And this coaster. That a preponderance of the sightings all happened right around Cedar Point. That people were either staying on the Chazé or boating right off of the amusement park. That you have a ton of stuff. Now, outside of that, there is another part of this history that deals with the Sandusky Register as well. The place where all this started.
Right. The Register is very involved in this.
Is also a huge part of the Lake Erie Monster lore, coincidentally, all of a sudden. And the Register actually, a number of different times, has been either the perpetrator of a hoax regarding the Lake Erie Monster or the recipient of or the butt of the joke as it regards the Lake Erie Monster. So the Sandusky Register is just intricately woven into this storyline all through it as well. There are a number of different sightings from people around Cedar Point. What's more interesting is the date and time of the announcement. And Tuesday night is a weird night to make an announcement. Wouldn't you say, out of all the days to make an announcement, a Tuesday at 9 o'clock seems a little bit strange to me.
Are you going to read this word for word? Because I have this sentence up right now if you want me to read it.
Well, why don't you read it to us word for word?
Okay, so I'm actually going to go back real quickly to read just a few other points here because you and I have the same website up, and maybe we can even put these links in the bottom of the show so you can kind of read along. So this is the one, it's weirdus.com. It's the weirdus.com one, and there is a whole story based on this, and Andy and I, the relationships were staggering. For years now, people have been reporting an unknown creature nicknamed South Bay Bessie or just plain Bessie in Lake Erie. It is described as a gray, snake-like creature and 30 to 40 feet long. Now, the interesting thing is some other sightings, and we won't get into the exact ones, but some of the sightings have also said that the creature was reportedly a copper-colored gold. Which makes the copper and gray track seem a little interesting, doesn't it? Some other reports also reported that the creature had been seen both on land and living in the water, which would be why the color combination of brown and blue. Why that odd color combination? That could be the representation of land, water, and the gray representing the monster.
And if you read another one of these that we're going to post here at the bottom from the Paranormal Files, they say in this one that the monster was gray-blue in color. So if you think that it being a land and sea animal is too much of a stretch and you want to focus on just colors that have been reported of this monster, copper, gray, and blue are all in the reports for being actual colors of this monster. So that's where those colors come from. Plus, it's been seen on the land, it's been seen in the sea, gray or the earth tones of the blue and the brown. Come on. Like, there's too much there for me.
Right.
I don't know about you.
Now, as if there was, if you're not convinced yet, which I'm sure plenty of you aren't, let's read the next paragraph down. By 1912, the monster had become the butt of local practical jokes. A Daily Register article, which is now the Sandusky Register, published in the spring of that year, 1912, recounts an encounter between Kelly's Island residents and a large sea monster, which broke through a sheet of ice and headed for the shore. Witnesses described the black object with a huge head, gaping mouth, and a row of teeth. The very last line of the story read, April 1st, its date of publication and reason for the tale. So this was a hoax. However, there was another hoax in 1931, and quote, other times the newspaper was at a hoax's receiving end. The July 22nd, 1931 edition of the Sandusky Register stated, Sandusky was all agog Tuesday night because it was reported that the sea serpent, supposed to be in the waters of Sandusky Bay, had been captured. There was a reported capturing of the Lake Erie monster in Sandusky Bay by Cedar Point on a Tuesday night in the 1930s. And I'm going to a different article now. It's thecabinet.com, which has some more extensive stuff. And I can read you this as well. Two fishermen from Cincinnati, according to this article, were fishing on Lake Erie when the monster surfaced next to their boat. He began striking the creature until he knocked it unconscious, quickly tied a line to it, and rowed it back back to shore. Before it could regain consciousness, they coiled the animal into a packing box. And several reporters saw it. They said it was a large snake-like beast with black, dark green, and white hide resembling that of an alligator. And then there were also reports that someone examined it and they said it was just an Indian python. So there was a big hoax about this 1931 capture that they thought were the monster. There was another reported capture where they actually got it to the beach, and then they had to go away to get equipment to, bring it in. And by the time they got back, the creature had gone back into the water and left behind silver scales on the beach. So all of a sudden, there's a lot of different things going on here. And there's plenty of different sightings and capture stories and whatnot. Right here, it says, from the marks left behind on the shore, the brothers estimated it was 20 to 30 feet in length and left behind several silver scales that were as large as silver dollars. So all of a sudden, at least in that regard, the colors make sense.
And let's take this into the real world now, and let's look at the history of what Cedar Fair has been doing over the last few years. It started with Wonder Mountain's Guardian, continued on to Journey to the Iron Reef. That the whole idea is that you make rides based on the lore of the park. Now, granted, all of these are dark rides, but who's to say that this new coaster that's going to be right on the lake, this is going to be the closest, it's going to be right there in the marina, overlooking the lake. Depending on what they do in the next few years with the old dorms over there, it could have a beautiful view of the lake. And not to say what they're going to do with the landscape over there either. We don't know if there's going to be water features. Now, the reason why we fell off of this is because with the revealed stuff, we bought those as fact, and there was no splashdown elements. There were no water elements in that layout.
We initially backed off of it. We were going to do this on Saturday night. The problem was we decided on Saturday when all this stuff started coming out, we were when the logo and the app came out, we were like, okay, there was a small leak. It's going to be Valravn. We don't want to look like a bunch of jerks. But now that more stuff started coming out later and later, and we keep continuing to see stuff, this is where you're starting to become slightly more skeptical than I've kind of remained less skeptical. You've become more skeptical as we've seen more now.
And I'm not doubting the logo, the Valravn logo. I'm not doubting that was legitimately in the app. However, the full-on renderings, when I found out that a majority of people believe that those are fan-made, and given what Cedar Fair has done in the past, that's what put me back onto this. Because I don't think that those are a good representation of what might be coming. Even so, even if that layout's completely correct, that doesn't mean the Valravn logo is correct either. That at any given time, it's my argument that probably a company like Cedar Fair probably has a number of different logos in front of them, either from failed rides, from concepts that, even if I'm going to my designer and I'm saying, hey, we're making a new roller coaster next year, here are 3 themes, give me 3 logos in order to ensure secrecy, you don't want too many people in that loop. And when you have too many people in the loop is when you have leaks. And so far up until this point, none of the leaks have come from inside the park. So obviously there's enough security measures there that all the leaks are coming from blueprints. I'm really not sure where the Fury, some people got their hands on the Fury logo of only a few days before it was actually announced. The Banshee logo never leaked at all. Gatekeeper was completely leaked by the website accidentally. But all of this is just too nice of a package. And, I've talked to our web designer, Matt, and he gave me some background on how websites and apps work. He says that there's really no reason to make something go live until it's absolutely necessary to do that. You can run apps in a virtual, world, in a virtual setting to see if they work correctly. So the fact that Cedar Point put all this stuff onto an app and people were able to break through it and access that information seems kind of amateurish. That it's something that they should have learned from. It's something they should have learned from the first Gatekeeper, debacle, which is how we got all of that. Which was also kind of the first major
Gatekeeper was a nicely kept secret up until those few days before.
And keep in mind, Gatekeeper is really the first roller coaster kind of in the really modern era of the internet, where pretty much everyone and their uncle's on the internet now. Pretty much it's only your uncle that's not on the internet. But for the most part, so it just seems too nice. And now when we tie in the Cedar Fair direction of tying stories to the parks to make things hit the local markets. Fury with the ties to Charlotte, with the Hornets, with the Bees. That's a direct tie to the locality. Banshee kind of ties to Ohio with the old Cedar Point name. That's a little looser. But here again, how does Valravn fit in? And do you make another coaster that has a hard name to produce? You already have Rougarou that people slaughter on an everyday basis. Do you want a new coaster with a really hard name to produce? Now, granted, I love the name. I love the logo. I'm not a fan of the layout at all. I think it's too cookie cutter for me. It's my whole B&M debate again. I don't want to get into that. But I love
it's too close to Griffin for you.
It's too close to Griffin. It's basically they traded a dive loop for a splashdown, and it's not enough for me. But I don't want to say it's not going to be a great ride, because people are going to love it. I'm not making that argument. I'm not saying that it's going to be fun to ride. I'm just saying, you made the statement. It's the difference between excitement and intriguing. That, I'm going to be excited for it. It's a new roller coaster. Am I intrigued by it? No. I have SheiKra. I've been on that. I was just on Griffin 2 weeks ago. I'm not intrigued by this when it looks almost a lot alike, man. This is the closest I've ever seen to a clone.
You can go back to 2013. Yeah. 2013, the same thing. Gatekeeper was exciting. Outlaw Run was intriguing. There's a difference.
But even Gatekeeper broke the mold. Where if you look at X-Flight and Wild Eagle, they were
did, but not on the same level.
No, but it definitely looked different. It had a different feel to it. You had hope for it. Now, whether or not people love Gatekeeper or don't love Gatekeeper or whatever, but this one doesn't have that. It doesn't even have the different feel to it. It looks like all the other dive coasters.
Well, the dive coasters that came before are quite a considerable amount bigger than Wild Eagle and X-Flight. So it's kind of like there's not much more there's not many more places to go with the dive coaster in terms of height and speed. With elements, yeah, we've started to see B&M do some new elements on some of the European ones, but they've been smaller rides. So it's kind of like, we're kind of starting to see a mix of it. We finally got a big one that has a little bit more to it, but at the same time, the layout that we've seen doesn't have as much to it as people were hoping for, which is where the disconnect here is. And that's why we're having this discussion in the first place.
So let me make my concluding statements here to wrap all of this up. One, I think it's too nice of a package. I think if you look at the history of leaks, that Cedar Fair keeps upping the ante every year. And we've seen just logos, with the bat, with a basic train, and then we saw Centurion with the Coliseum theme. Also, you claim to see a wing coaster in the video, so now once again you're bringing in a different style of coaster. Banshee, and now we're taking it to that next level where they're giving us even more, and it's all and I think the hoax of the Register ties in from the Lake Erie Monster story, that all of this started with a story from the Register, and I think it's hysterical that if this comes to pass, that this whole story will start with a hoax from the Register again, that Cedar Point pulled one over on the Register. Tie that together with Cedar Fair's desire to tell stories from the park. You look at, and we provided all the information. We don't want to read stuff to you all night because I could go through and you'll see the similarities right away, and you'll be like, hey, wait a minute. You tie it together with the physical evidence of the blue track, the copper track, that we said, hey, that's a really weird color. Now all of a sudden it's not so much of a weird color. And then you tie that with the media kit that shows water, not air, but water, and a lightning bolt over the lake. Come on. To me, it screams Lake Erie Monster. Now, I don't know if that's what it's going to be called, but I believe that's going to be the theme. That's going to be the theme in the story.
Well, and the big thing to think about is Lake Erie Monsters is the name of the American Hockey League team, the minor league hockey team in Cleveland. So, and that's where the name comes from, the legend of the Lake Erie Monster, and their logo is the black head of a monster with little yellow eyes sticking out, and it's got these little fins on there. Now, the little media invite, the Google Cardboard thing, has that little crown on it that the bird in the Valravn logo is wearing. Who's to say that maybe that same thing isn't on the top of a monster in some other logo? We don't know. Yeah. And I originally said that the Lake Erie Monsters logo looks somewhat similar to that little crown thing because it's got the fins on the top of the head. It doesn't look exactly like it, but that's what it reminded me of, and that's actually where I said to you, look at this little crown thing. Doesn't it kind of look like the Lake Erie Monsters logo? That's how you and I got started on this. We said, well, what is the story behind the Lake Erie Monster? And we started looking up articles, and then all of a sudden we find all these things. And the other thing, and you and I haven't discussed this, on this Dark Destinations thing, there is the black dog of Lake Erie, because Lake Erie has these conditions known as the Witch of November, and that is the ability for Lake Erie to produce very strong and unexpected storms. And they are called black dog storms. Or let's see, there's another name for them as well. The black dog of Lake Erie, because there's apparently a dog that jumped overboard on a ship in the Erie Canal. And the people on the boat kept speeding the boat along to make the dog swim with them, and the dog was actually killed by a canal lock, and now the ghost of the dog haunts Lake Erie. And just before storms come into Lake Erie and wreck a ship, the ghost of the black dog comes on board, walks across the deck and into the water. And that's when ships become shipwrecked on Lake Erie. So there's a connection to the storm there, too. Now, how much that's connected to the monster, I don't know. but it's the idea of these legends of the lake itself. And Rob Decker Center from Dreams to Screams documentary about Gatekeeper, they're trying to open up the views to the lake and make the lake a more prominent part of the park. So why would you not go for this whole Lake Erie monster and theme something to the lake? That's kind of the crux that we're on here, and why this makes so much sense.
And if all of that wasn't enough for you, the last thing that, if you do any search, that you'll find is the Great Lakes Brewing Company also has a beer called the Lake Erie Monster. And you may remember the Great Lakes Brewing Company. They're also the ones that make Ruger Brew. So obviously Cedar Point has talked to them and is already in business with them, that I'm sure if we see a Lake Erie Monster ride, I can't imagine that beer not showing up inside the park since Ruger Brew showed up, this year. So there's just so much evidence out there that points us away from Valravn, that Valravn has no connection to the park beside being a cool logo, a nice name, doesn't really fit any of the physical evidence. I would even argue that the colors in that logo don't really match that track color. That is a dark copper, and that logo is very, very goldish. So unless your train is going to be unless that train's going to be bright gold, I don't see it. I see the blue in the logo. That's clear. I don't see that copper color, though. And I don't know how to rectify that in my brain. And like you said, it's a weird color combination. The brownish copper, gray, and blue. They've tried it on T-shirts a lot for Millennium Force. I have a few of them. You might have seen me wear them, but it's just a weird color combo. I think at this point, I think we need to leave it up to the people. I think we've said our piece on this. You think it is what it is. I think it's something completely different. Granted, I've been going to the park.
would be happy to be wrong. Again, let me be on record. I would be happy to be wrong and see something bigger.
Granted, I've been going to the park since 1992, every single year, with the exception of one season that I missed in 2003. I don't think I missed anything big that year, did I?
It was a marginal improvement.
Well, it probably would have been broken the day I was there anyway, so who knows? So I think I have a pretty good sense of what Cedar Point's all about. The last few years have thrown me into a little bit of a tailspin. But I really believe that this is the way they're going. I hope it's the way they're going, because I know a lot of people are already raging on the internet about this layout and about this cookie cutter dive coaster that a lot of people are calling it that. It's going to be a nice ride. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying it kind of lacks in the originality department a little bit. So on that note,
if I can, I want to drop the mic. If it ends up being what we've seen, and you coaster enthusiasts have a problem with it, stay the hell away from Cedar Point. Quicker wait times for me.
You know what? I almost want to make a bet here. I have a stupid Beast T-shirt in the closet that I think that I don't want to wear anymore. But maybe we need to make a bet. let's make a bet.
Here's the thing. I would be okay being wrong, though. You have to want me to not be wrong.
Yeah. Well, if you're wrong, you need to wear a Raptor shirt somewhere. And
I'll happily wear a Raptor shirt. I have a Raptor shirt that I like very much. It's the same color of green, too. It's a very nice shirt.
And I'll wear that stupid Beast T-shirt if I'm wrong again somewhere. So there you go. The challenge has been laid out in front of us.
When we go to Valravn Media Day for the 3-inversion dive coaster in May, I'll wear Raptor, you wear Beast. Or at least opening weekend.
Well, anyway, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you've enjoyed our discussion here. Maybe we've changed your mind a little bit. So hopefully Tuesday will be exciting for all of us, and people won't be raging on the internet, and they'll be overjoyed by the brand new, beautiful dive coaster that they have received. That's amazingly original. That's what we're all hoping for. So as always, I'm Andy Robarchak from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Danny Miller from Rochester, New York. And get your calendars. They're going to look great this year.
Oh, yeah.
They're on the store.
And as always, right on, right, Warriors.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.